Welcome to the Mother Herd Podcast with Denise Waters.
Hi, it's Denise from the Mother Herd, and I wanted to take the opportunity for this episode to talk about community and to talk about community that's hurting. And so when I started the Mother Herd, it was really, really vital for me to set up a situation where moms can tell their stories and build a community. While that is so important, my core beliefs are around community, connection, and loneliness. And oftentimes those things happen in places where tragedy strikes. And I'm coming to you tonight after a tragedy has struck the community in which my sons grew up. We don't live there anymore, and neither does the young man that was lost. And that's a little bit tricky, but at the same time, it's been powerful and magical to see what he, even in dying, has done for the community and to bring people back together who haven't seen each other in a very long time. So while it matters to us that we lost this incredible young man, Berkeley Homer, and that his family is personally suffering right now, and that it was a freak accident and a chain of events that was just tragic, that included really good medical care, transportation, burn units and surgeries and amazing efforts for him to ultimately lose his fight. And while that is not the part of the story that is mine to tell, the part that is mine to tell is that this is happening across all of our cities and all of our communities around the country where we lose people every day. And I am here to tell you it is vitally important that we are checking in on the peers of those that are lost, the younger brothers and the older sisters and the younger brothers. Did I get that right? Younger and older brothers, sisters, all of it, and see how they're doing. Checking in on the teachers, checking in on the community of the people who knew them to see if they're okay, to make sure that they know they're not alone. The people who have moved away are coming together online, remembering and talking and being together, even in this really hard time. So for us in this community, this was one of those kids who brought magic. Everywhere he went, everything he did was over the top, fun, and with love. He was one of my oldest son's friends, and yet he was kind and inclusive of our younger sons as well. Our little one is a lot younger, and he even posted on the memorial site today about how Berkeley was so important to him, and he really looked up to him. And that's important. We can't not lose people. And yet the way we react to how they are lost is so important. It can be emotional. It can be hard. It can take the deepest part of us to put aside the anger that we have for how things happened or the sadness we have for how things happened. And while not feeling those things, also moving to action and checking in on the people who need it. For me today, there was one person who I knew when we had this loss that I needed to check in with. And so I checked in with her. That was important to me. There might be 10 that you want to check in with when you hear about a loss in your community. And that's important to do. So this might not seem like the most mother herd thing to do, but it is about loneliness, it is about connection, and it is about community. The last thing that I can even imagine is losing my child or one of my children. And so I am really pushing through today to think about Berkeley's mom and how she must be feeling, but also all those other moms in the community who loved him so deeply. And how do we come together and make sure that that feeling is not lost? We will all have memories of loss from our childhood to now. And building these core values of we come together when things are hard is really important. So I encourage you today to reach out to somebody who maybe experienced a loss that you know of from when you were a kid or even more recently, and just check in on how they're doing, because that really does matter. And then to craft your story about a loss that you might have is going to be a really powerful way for you to build connection. And I think about that now as I think back to high school and when we lost a teacher in our building who mattered a great deal to me. And when I think about him, his name is David Brown, and the impact that he had on me and on the community was incredible. When I use his story to teach a lesson or to remind somebody about the impact that a teacher can have, it's really important for me to talk about the day that I was his TA and he was like, just watch. And I was like, okay, what's going to happen? And he came into the room and he picked a fight with another student in the room. And they started to physically be in an altercation, and nobody knew what to do. And all of a sudden he just stopped and stood up and he's like, okay, write what you saw. He was demonstrating, the other kid was in on it, what you do as a witness when you see violence. And he wanted them to write about it and to share what they experienced. I went to high school in the 80s, so we probably wouldn't do something like that today. But what was important is that he made sure that his students had first-hand knowledge of how to write from this perspective. And those students loved him for it. There was another day when we came into the class and his chair was up on the table and all the chairs were up on the table. And we were like, what is happening today? And he's like, it's a high-level meeting. And we all got up on the chairs on the table and got to see the room from a different perspective. And to take somebody else's perspective was always something that he was teaching. So as I tell those stories about him, my story about him has changed over time. When he first passed away a long time ago, it was a lot of tears. It was a lot of, how could this have happened when he had a young wife and a young baby? And now it's turned into the stories that I can relate to as a teacher myself in a way that I might use them in my classroom. And so it's really powerful to see how our emotions change over time by the use of stories. If I hadn't ever talked about David Brown in the last 30 years, it would still bring tears and a choked up feeling to me. But because I've talked about him over time, I'm able to talk about him in a much more productive way. So that's an example of a story that you can do right now with a loss that you've had. And I encourage you to talk to other people today, to go out and to say, are you okay? How can I help? What are you experiencing right now? Because those deep connections that we're making are the ones that are going to sustain us on the hardest days. So, Burke, I can't believe you're gone. You were a light in this world, and we are so much better because we knew you. And Redmond kids who are now adults, we're here for you, whatever you need, because we know this was a big loss. So thank you for joining me on the Mother Herd today. I will be back for other episodes where we are talking about emotions and experiences. I will have more mom interviews in the coming weeks, but thank you for indulging me today to talk about emotions. Take good care. Thank you for joining us for the Mother Herd podcast. Please subscribe and like so that we can keep bringing you more episodes.